Thank you for tuning into my channel. Today, I had the wonderful opportunity to interview Jen Rosenbaum. Jen is a 4-year breast cancer survivor. Jen is not only an active breast cancer advocate, but she's also a speaker, a photographer, and now an author of her first book. I hope you will enjoy the interview as much as I enjoyed my time with Jen. And I'm going to share my screen right now to show you the cover of her book and A Survivor's Guide to Life After Breast Cancer. It's an incredible read. You won't be able to put it down. And I highly recommend that you visit Jen's YouTube channel and soon to be podcast. So thank you for joining me and enjoy the interview. Oh, well, I read your book for the second time last night.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, and I got to tell you, I went on and watched your YouTube video where you got diagnosed. It was from the heart. And boy, I remember that day in my life. And wow, it just brought back like so many memories for me.
Yeah, today is actually my diagnosis anniversary.
Really?
Oh
Yeah, my goodness.
4 years. Yeah.
Are you going to do anything tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to do an Instagram live and I'm going to do a video and all sorts of things. I'm actually recording the first episode of a new podcast today as well. So,
oh, okay. I think the important thing about what you're doing, which is amazing, is that a lot of people don't talk about the emotional side of breast cancer. And I just did a podcast on this. Like you survived it. You're one of the lucky ones. I had a double mastectomy as well, but I did not need chemo. But that's when I became an advocate because I thought, you know what? Somehow I got to make something good out of this. And I ended up being an advocate for preventive breast cancer vaccine that is going to trial probably next month.
It's amazing.
Your part where you said that, you take care of everyone else but you. And I've read every book I could find when I was diagnosed by a breast cancer survivor. And they all who wrote about it had something in common, that they consider themselves, put myself last. But tell us the story of how you discovered on your own that you thought there was something wrong.
Sure. So I'm a photographer by profession, and I do a lot of posting on social media and whatnot. So one day I took a picture to post on social media, just a quick snapshot, and I noticed a shadow on my chest. And if I wasn't a photographer, I probably would never have noticed, to be honest with you. And it just was I was like, oh, what is that? And I started feeling around, and I felt something unusual, but it didn't feel like the lump that we're taught to feel for. So I really didn't think much of it. I had a mammogram, I don't know, a few months prior, and I had another one coming a few weeks after. So I figured, oh, I'll just wait, it's whatever. I have no family history and I'm healthy and I'm young and, all the things that we're taught, right? I'm not overweight and I exercise and all the things. So I figured I would just wait. So I had a sonogram scheduled actually for July 2017, July 10th. And I went in, they were just looking to check on some cysts that I had for, prior imaging. And I basically, I laugh. I think to myself, I remember saying to my girlfriend that morning, oh, I'll see you later. I have a quick mammogram and I'm going to, or a sonogram. I'll meet you for lunch after. Going in, not knowing that my entire life was going to change. But, they checked on the cysts and everything was fine. And then they were ready to wrap it up. And I said, I almost forgot. And I said to him, oh, by the way, before I forget, can you just check this thing over here? And they pushed down and there was nothing. And then they pushed super hard to the point of pain. And this giant black hole showed up on the sonogram machine. And I was like, what is that? And she said, I'm going to get the doctor. I'll be right back. And the doctor basically said, I'm not letting you leave here without a biopsy. So I had an immediate biopsy, and actually 4 years ago today, I got the phone call that I was diagnosed with invasive lobular carcinoma, and I had a 7 centimeter mass in my right breast, and underneath it, I had a 3 centimeter mass. So I had a lot of cancer in my breast. And the mammogram that they did after the biopsy, they didn't even pick up on any of it. It's just insane. Um, and 2 weeks later, I had a bilateral mastectomy, or bilateral mastectomies, I should say. And I had 8 rounds of chemotherapy as well.
That's so amazing that you actually, so it must have been intuition. Like you said, I really need, I think a lot of women just don't go that extra step. But I've met so many women that it was, breast cancer wasn't found because the right things weren't done. One of my podcasts that I've had a lot of feedback on is the value of a second opinion. In this case, sounds like you were the second opinion, but in my case, my breast cancer, I had bilateral breast cancer, but it did not show up on the mammogram either. Mm. And it wasn't until I sought a second opinion, and the nurse practitioner actually felt something, which was a lobular cancer, which we're always, in your book, you say, we're meant to feel for something that feels like a pea. Correct. Well, lobular cancer doesn't feel like anything.
Correct. That's what I had as well.
Yep. And so when I went for my sonogram, he said, "Oh no, I don't see anything. You're fine." So he called up to the nurse practitioner. She said, "Did you check 7 o'clock?" Mm-hmm. And when he put the wand at 7 o'clock and I saw this black hole like you're describing, I thought, okay, this can't be good. Yeah. Right. So then you had your biopsy immediately that day.
Immediately. I was very lucky. I had an immediate biopsy. The next thing I knew, they're sticking needles in me and titanium markers. And I'm like, what is going on? I have lunch with a friend in a half an hour. I don't have time for this right now. And the doctor essentially sat me down and he said, look, I'm going to be really frank with you. This is breast cancer. I'm 99% sure it's breast cancer. I don't need the biopsy to come back. I've seen enough. And I just remember saying, we said, well, what if it's not? What else could it be if it's not breast cancer? And he said, there's nothing else it could be.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, talk a little bit about, the cancer was only in the right side. So what persuaded you to go for the double mastectomy?
I kind of felt like if I was doing the surgery, I just wanted them gone. This is one of the things that haunts me quite a bit, actually, because I think what happens is you're diagnosed with cancer and then you say, okay, just do whatever you need to do. It's fine. I want to live, that sort of week between diagnosis and prognosis, right, is so hard. You think the worst. You're like, I'm dying. Does everybody know I love them? Did I do what I needed to do on this earth? Like, what is happening? It's like, your whole world is rocked to its core. So when you make decisions coming from that place, which is often what we do, it's difficult. For me, I found it extremely difficult to sit in front of two breast surgeons, because I had two opinions, and say, what should I do? And both of them saying, well, here are your options. Which do you choose? Mm-hmm. And, that's not how we're used to it being in the medical system. We're used to a doctor saying, this is the right thing for you. So in one way you have power because it's partially your decision making. And another way you feel helpless because you just want somebody to tell you what the right answer is. So I remember saying to my doctor, if I told you I wanted a bilateral mastectomy, what would you say? And she said, I would say that would be the right decision. That would be how I would go.
Okay.
So for me, it was a no-brainer. And I'm glad that I did it because actually they found some precancerous cells in my other breast. So it's a good thing that I did it. But my feeling was that if it was sneaky enough to pop up in one breast, what makes it not sneaky enough to pop up in the other? I didn't want to have the stress anymore of the mammograms and every 6 months and could it come back? What I didn't know at the time was that even having mastectomies doesn't guarantee that breast cancer won't come back. I didn't know that. And I think a lot of women don't know that. They think, well, just take my breast off and then I won't have to worry about breast cancer anymore. And it just isn't that black and white. I will say this, it was the right decision. I just don't know if it was as informed of a decision as I wish it were. But I wouldn't have changed the decision, if that makes any sense.
Well, that's exactly how I felt too. I felt that for one, symmetry. I was like, if I'm going to have it done, and I couldn't bear the thought of going to it for another mammogram and thinking I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Mhm.
And you mentioned in your book too, and I had when they did remove my other breast, there was exactly like what you described that you found. I actually had precancer in
Mhm.
the other breast. And a lot of women don't realize that lobular cancer in situ normally mirrors. That's what they called mine. They called it a mirror cancer.
Mhm.
Normally, if you've got it in one side, you've got it in the other. And the only way to know, because it won't show up on a mammogram. But I know it haunted me too after I did it, thinking, like, I know, like you said in your book, crap, what did I just do? I just cut off my breast. Like, you're so into the whole process that
Mhm.
it's not till I remember we had to stay in a hotel the night before my mastectomy because I was far from the hospital. And I remember looking in the mirror thinking, oh my gosh, when I wake up, you're going to be gone. And, besides being part of sexuality, like I nursed both my sons and all those memories. And you're like, well, but I felt too that they had betrayed me. I had this feeling like my body had betrayed me. I was like you. I eat healthy and I walk. And so a lot of women think, well, I'm exempt from breast cancer because I do all the right things.
Mhm.
But I mean, I have no history either. Like you said,
Mhm.
you have no family history, but it can touch anyone,
Yeah.
really. So, um, so then you talk about a little bit about, the recovery from the mastectomy. And I don't know, I listened to one of your podcasts too. I don't know about you, but I really wasn't prepared for that week after.
Mm.
I thought, and not only from uh, what clothing I would need back in those days, there wasn't a whole lot on the internet about that, but also not being able to use your arms, like just getting out of bed. Like I didn't realize like how much we use those muscles for just normal things. So did you find that was quite a shock?
I did. I was prepared for it on paper.
Uh-huh. Yep.
um, but you have a hard time understanding why can't I use my arms? This has
Yeah.
nothing to do with my arms. Like I don't understand what's happening. I still have trouble with my shoulders and whatnot. I would have trouble after each reconstruction surgery. I mean, it was like it always seems to come back to my arms. Um, that was very frustrating and a very painful. That was probably the most painful part of the journey is that, doing the PT 5 times a day and knowing that if you didn't do it you weren't getting your movement back and your range of motion back, but it really hurt and it felt like salt in the wound, didn't it? It's like
Mhm.
it's not enough that I'm going through all this. Now I can't even raise my arms. I'm like trying to itch myself like this now. It's funny because everybody always says to me, what's the gift that I can get somebody that's having a mastectomy? I go, get them a back scratcher. Trust me, it'll be like the best thing in the entire world. They'll use it for everything. um, but yeah, that was a very helpless feeling, because I kind of feel like I've had children, I've had surgeries prior. I know that I can tolerate pain, I can, push myself through certain things, but when you physically can't do something, that's very frustrating. And I would say the first 2 weeks after the mastectomy was very difficult. The drains were very annoying. It was like you just couldn't really find any sense of normalcy.
Mhm.
After the 2 weeks, though, I felt for me, I was getting better exponentially every day. And actually, when I look back, I think, wow, the recovery, excuse me, the recovery was actually faster than I would imagine it to be. But
Mhm.
when you're in it, it's not easy.
Yeah, and you mentioned that your sister came over and washed your hair. Like, I remember that feeling. My mom stayed with me the week I got home, and she and my husband were amazing. But they gave me these dry shampoo caps at the hospital. And like, I remember the first day I got my hair clean, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like $1 million, something simple as simple as that.
Yeah.
But I was impressed that the only physical therapy they gave me was the walking the wall with my arms.
Yes.
Yeah, but I was surprised what happened when I had my exchange surgery. I actually ended up with a frozen shoulder
Mm-hmm.
and I thought the exchange surgery would be a walk in the park. But, and I've talked to a lot of women who were shocked. And actually, my physical therapist said, I wish they would tell you about this when you have a mastectomy, that this can happen at
Mm-hmm.
any stage,
Mm-hmm.
even though you think the exchange surgery is just going to be, a piece of cake.
Yeah.
And, but anyhow, just those things that you don't think about,
Mm-hmm.
at the time.
Yes.
So you went to Sloan Kettering, which was really one of the premier places to have treatment. I went to Dana-Farber in Boston,
Mm-hmm.
which was premier as well. But you talk a little bit about too that the loss of sensation. Like I was not also a candidate for nipple sparing
Mm-hmm.
because I also had invasive ductal.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, we can't really guarantee you that there somehow hasn't been invasion of the nipples. So, and I didn't realize how big a deal that was going to be. And you talk a little bit about that. Do you want to share a little bit about that part of your
Yeah.
book?
Yeah. I think, sitting here 4 years later, I'll tell you that I think I probably miss my nipples more than my breasts. The not having sensation is a very difficult thing to wrap my head around. And it's not just in a sexual way, although it obviously does affect
Mm-hmm.
that as well. Um, for me, it's very interesting because I'm a boudoir photographer and I often photograph women that are in lingerie or undressed. And there's definitely the boob envy is real, you know. But I've also struggled with to flip it around. I still don't have nipples of any sort. I haven't done any reconstruction or tattoos or anything like that. And actually, I have an appointment to get tattoos on August 3rd. And I keep going back and forth. Should I? Shouldn't I? Should I? Shouldn't I? Um, it's still hard for me. It's still really hard for me. It's interesting when I look in the mirror and I don't see any nipples. It looks very natural to me. At this point, I've sort of gotten used to it. I recently put on some temporary tattoos just to see if I would like it. And at first I hated it. I cried. I said, this is terrible. It's not who I am. I don't like it. And then as I lived with it, I started feeling sad that they were wearing off. I was like, I want them back. Um, it's interesting how the appearance of nipples changes the aesthetic of what you see in the mirror. And I do think that is going to be helpful for me mentally when I do get the tattoos, even though I'm anxious about getting them. I do think that just sort of that glance in the mirror or feeling concerned about taking your shirt off at the gym, or, I remember there was a time I I had some sort of episode. I'm not sure what it was. I don't know if it was a panic attack or if it was something, but I ended up in the hospital. We were out and about, and I had one of those moments you can't breathe, and nothing had even happened. But looking back, I think it was probably a panic attack. But regardless, I ended up in the hospital, and I was really sort of like half blacked out and really not doing well. And I heard the nurse say, "Get her out of her dress and put her in a gown." And I couldn't see anything. I mean, it was like a really weird thing. And I remember yelling, I had a mastectomy. I had a mastectomy. And she was like, why are you yelling that? And I was like, I don't want you to be scared when you see it. She was like, sweetie, I'm a nurse. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
But I worry about how other people perceive it more than how I even perceive it myself, as far as aesthetics are concerned. As far as feeling is concerned, it's very sad. It's actually very sad. It's one of the things that I mourn the most. I remember the doctor telling me that I might not feel hugs, and how devastated I was when she told me that. And the truth is, I do feel hugs because I'm sure you experience it too. You do feel pressure, right? So when
Right.
somebody hugs you tight, you feel pressure. But there are moments like when my child is laying on my chest, or you're in the shower and you can't feel the water hitting you, or just certain moments that it feels very empty.
Well, I'll share with you. My husband and I talked about, so my plastic surgeon offered me the option of making nipples.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through that whole thing, and then I had them tattooed so they looked sort of real.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a double-edged sword because number one, they didn't last, they fell, and the tattoo wore off. Of course, I wasn't getting the tattoo that you're talking about is a much more refined process. I had mine done in the plastic surgeon's office, but it didn't get me any feeling. And the second thing was I could wear a t-shirt without, having a bra on. And all of a sudden, like, they weren't good enough to be real nipples, but they were enough to make it annoying where I had to wear a bra.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'd like to hear from you later when you get the 3D tattoos, because I've thought of that too.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm thinking, well, if I wear something white, then I'm going to
Yeah.
have to,
That would be the only downside for me. But the
Right.
truth of the matter is I did tell her, I was like, I want to go really light. I don't want to go,
Yeah.
I don't want to go dark. So this way, I mean, I'm fairly light skinned anyway, but this
Yeah.
way I think I
Yeah.
could get away with it. Because
Well,
that
I've
is
been,
one of the advantages, right? I don't have to wear a bra if I don't want to.
right.
So.
Well, I've been toying about getting them done myself because I actually just had to have my implants redone last year because I hit the 10-year mark,
Mm.
and the implants I had were on the list where they were worried about them leaking.
Mm.
So, and that's the other thing that I didn't see it mentioned in your book, but I went through this whole size anxiety thing where they're showing me these implants in the plastic surgeon's office. I liked the size I was with the expanders, but I didn't get that when I think my husband slipped her $100 bill and said, put big ones in there.
Mm.
But because I didn't like them, and I actually was my fault. I actually picked them out. I'm just joking about that. But did you have any thoughts about that when you were?
I've actually had 4 sets of implants in my 4 short years.
Wow.
So,
Oh my
um,
gosh.
no, I never really had anxiety about it. I really wanted to try to stay around the size that I was. I felt it was proportional. My last surgery, so I had my first 2 surgeries were at Sloan and they were not great. So then I switched to a plastic surgeon outside Sloan who was incredible. We redid the surgery actually a year ago, just the other day was the anniversary of that surgery. And once that surgery settled, I knew I needed another fat grafting and a couple of little revisions. And I said to him before the revision, I said, you're going to want to change my implants. I think I need bigger implants. And he was like, no, 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 and then he looked at me and he was like, yeah, you're right. I definitely want you to have bigger implants. So I'm very happy with where I am right now, not because it's the size I wanted or didn't want or anything, but because it fills my pockets and it suits my body proportionally. And that's really all that I wanted. I wasn't really attached to like a specific size or, I just wanted the shape to look decent enough. I'm also extremely hollow up here because they had to remove the tissue all the way up to my collarbone. So I'm very, 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 very hollow. And the fat graftings don't like to stick on me so much. So I just wanted it to look, as natural as possible. That was really the most important thing to me.
So I've never had fat grafting. Can you explain to us like what that's like or?
Yeah, it's basically liposuction, which sounds amazing,
Mhm.
but it's not the liposuction maybe you would get if you went in for liposuction necessarily. But basically, they remove fat from an area of your body and then they inject it around the implant in hopes that it will create like a more natural slope or it'll give it you won't have as much rippling.
Mhm.
My body just doesn't like to keep the fat, which is ironic because
No.
how come I can't lose weight anywhere else? But
Yeah.
it bruises you. You get very sore from it, but it's in a few weeks you feel better from that.
Mhm. So I noticed also as well, you talked about changing your diet a little bit.
A
You
little
don't,
bit.
a little bit. I know. You know what? To me, that's my pet peeve, I guess, a little bit myself, because you know, people, as you said in your book, they'll say, should you be eating that? I actually have the opposite in my family. Like, why aren't you eating that?
Mhm.
For you, or
I really believe in balance in life, and I was always healthy before cancer, and I'm going to continue to be healthy after cancer as far as my eating is concerned. But look, I don't want to be on my deathbed one day and go, thank God I didn't eat brownies, I
right,
mean, it's just, I think that there's unfortunately a lot of cancer muggles out there who talk a lot about sugar feeding cancer and you shouldn't eat this and you shouldn't eat that. I believe in a life of moderation, and I try to eat healthy, and I also really like pizza and ice cream.
yeah, right, exactly, yeah. And I love that part of your book when you talk about looking at your life like a gift box,
Hmm.
and what you want. You want to talk about that a little bit? Or,
Sure.
or do you?
The reason why I just took a big breath and a big sigh is because I'm still very much in the process. It's interesting when you write a book and everybody kind of thinks you have everything figured out, and that's not really the case. The point of the book was that I'm going to teach you and show you what I'm going through and consistently going through. I'm currently going through a divorce right now. This is sort of the last, as far as I see it, one of the last little pieces of the cleanup. One of the things I needed to change to get my health back. um, it doesn't make it easy, and that's really what I want to say about that, like being able to look at your life, what do you want it to look like, is really hard. um, and I know I talk in the book about like having pretty wrapping paper and like how do you want it to look, and we all want that, but to get to that point is really ugly and messy sometimes. And I'm very much in the thick of that right now.
Oh,
um,
sorry that you've got that to, on top of.
yeah, it's hard, but it's also when you finally get the courage to do the things that you really need. This is going back to the conversation we had before about putting everybody else first.
Mhm.
Selfish acts of my entire life, right? In the moment it was like, how am I going to do this? This is so selfish. I'm going to break the heart of my family, my children, my friends, my everybody, but I know in my heart of hearts that this is what I need to live. I
Yeah.
can't. It felt extremely selfish at the time. What I'm learning now is that actually it's the most selfless thing I've ever done. And
Mhm.
even though it has hurt other people, like my children, for example, I know that it's hard on them. I also know that I'm doing them a giant favor by showing them that they don't have to live in situations that are not good for them and are toxic to their health and their bodies and their minds, and that they too can be brave enough to stand up for that. So it is definitely a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Nobody gets out of divorce unscathed, unfortunately. Um, and in a lot of ways, this is even harder than having cancer. I kept thinking I had cancer, I could do anything. This is in a lot of ways much harder. It's just not over with the book ending, it's just not over. And I think we're constantly going to be changing our lives. I mean, you're 11 years out, I'm 4 years out. I think probably you still make decisions based on having had breast cancer and what you
Right.
want your life to look like. But I do think if I want my life to look like what I talk about in the book and how I see it in my world, that this is what I needed to do to get there. So, I didn't talk about that in the book because it had not happened yet,
Right.
obviously.
I think of life BC before breast cancer,
Mhm.
and I mean the hardest thing I ever went through before my breast cancer was losing my dad.
Mm.
You know, and it's funny because it was during that time where I saw him so clearly all the time, like he'd come
Mhm.
to me in my dreams and whatever. But losing, I think what breast cancer does teach you is being present in the present. And what do I need today to get through my day? Um, and again, finally having the courage to say no. Like I would never say no. Somebody asked me to do something. Okay, sure. When you want me to be there, kind of thing. But getting rid of all the toxic people and things that it's kind of liberating.
Well, that's why I talk about it in the book. I mean, when you
Yeah.
talk about food, for example, I want to say to people, who cares if you're eating sugar? How's your relationship with your family? How's your relationship with your spouse? How's your relationship with your friends? Where is your boundaries? Where are your, for me personally, I found that all of that led to so much more toxicity in my body than eating a brownie ever did, or having a
Mhm.
diet soda. It was like, the feelings around trying to make everybody else happy and putting everybody else first and never saying no, and not speaking what was on my mind, and holding in all of that, the repression of all of that. I mean, is it any surprise I got breast cancer? Like that's the other thing I think of at times. It's like, why am I so surprised? For years I didn't speak what was on my mind. I wasn't true to my heart. The universe kept knocking and I wasn't answering. So then it came pounding,
Mhm.
and so I realized after breast cancer that I needed to make a lot of adjustments in my life and the way that I handle people. And it's not to say that all the people in my life were toxic. I only had to get rid of a few toxic people, but the people that weren't toxic, I made the relationship toxic because I wasn't setting boundaries. I was holding resentment and anger and all of that because I kept saying yes. It wasn't their fault.
Mhm.
And I have to tell you, which, like I said, are most of them, and the ones that I had to put boundaries up in are better than ever.
Yeah.
They're meant to upkeep them. And I didn't know that. I know that now. And I know that if you put up those boundaries and a relationship falters because of it, it's not meant to be.
Mhm. Yeah, there's two quotes I use in my book that I think about a lot. One of them is, well, at the time I was going through treatment, was Winston Churchill, that he said, when you're going through hell, just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one was Eleanor Roosevelt, which she said, you'll never know, a woman is like a tea bag.
You never
You'll never know
know.
how strong she is until you put her in hot
Hot
water,
water. Yeah.
you know? And yeah, uh, it's, but don't you find it like what I find myself, like the work that you're doing by putting yourself out there and telling people it's okay not to be okay. And to me is such a big message to women. And I found since I was diagnosed, like this work I do with the breast cancer vaccine, I tell Dr. Tui he saved me because after I was diagnosed, I was like a lost, I just retired from teaching and I was like this
Mm-hmm.
lost puppy. I'm like, I can't sit home and be sorry for myself all day. I need to go out and do something. And I find that there's two types of women that I've met. And some of them don't ever want to talk about it again. They want to like pretend like it never happened. And there's those like yourself and me where it's therapeutic
Mm-hmm.
to get out and talk. And it's therapeutic to feel like, gee, maybe something good can come of this horrible thing that happened to me. If I can help one person from going through what I went through, then maybe there was a point to all this. Like you say, you talk about either God or the universe. Like, I was meant somehow for this to happen,
Yeah.
but I won't really know why. And we used to joke, I was a Catholic school teacher. We used to joke with our principal, say, hey, sister, all I can tell you is God's got a lot of explaining to do.
Mm-hmm.
you know, but anyway, gosh, there's so many things I could talk to you about. So, you know, the other thing you said is that, cancer is a lonely disease.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as other people try to help you, sometimes they don't mean to because they say and do things with utmost love, as you say. But sometimes they should just keep their mouth shut, really.
The dumbest things. The dumbest things. Like,
Yeah.
your boobs look great. What do you mean? You don't have to wear a bra? I'm so jealous.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Like you got a boob job for free, aren't you lucky? Yeah.
I
Well,
love
would you
that. The
like
free
to
boob job. The free
right?
boob
Yeah.
job. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Or
I
like
don't.
the how many people every once in a while around social media will start floating that article that's like, if you suck lemons, it's stronger than chemotherapy. Like, you shouldn't be having treatment. You should be doing this, or you shouldn't be shouldn't, whatever it is. There's always that shame. It's a shame thing, and people don't realize that it's a shame thing. Or like, oh, I need to have another surgery. Another one? Aren't you
Mhm.
like, are you sure you need another one? I mean, isn't it like enough already? Okay.
Yeah. Well, again, it goes back to like when you're done, let's say from your first situation, like, well, you should be getting on with it, you know?
Oh, well, and that's really the whole point behind the book, right? Was
Mhm.
the whole, you should be happy you're alive. And even the pressure. Like I remember somebody saying to me, "Oh, you're going to be one of those kinds of survivors that like runs marathons after this." And I was like, "I can't even make it to my mailbox without feeling exhausted. Like, why are you putting that pressure on me to have to be this survivor that like goes out and changes the world? Like, maybe I just want to survive right now."
Mhm.
But I do think that I understand it. I understand it when you take the personalization out of it. When I see other survivors that are really thriving, I say to myself, I want to be like that. I want to be like that. And then other people will say to me, but you are like that. I don't think I'm like that because I know the downside and the hard emotions, and I feel those, and I don't see that person maybe feeling those emotions. So that is the point that I'm trying to teach people, is that you can feel both happy to be alive and really sad that this happened to you. You can feel both surrounded by love and lonely as hell.
Mhm.
You can, those things do exist at the same time, and that um we need to drop other people's expectations on what it looks like after, and that you can be grateful that you're alive and also not feel alive.
Yeah, and I think also too, they don't understand like the little shadow that follows you, the little voice in your head saying, "Well, I could come back, I could
Mhm.
come back." And that's like a really big. I remember when I hit 5 years and they say, "Oh, you hit 5 years, you're fine." Well, I met a lot of women that it came back a lot,
Mhm.
later than that. So it's not, a guarantee, although it
There's
is
no guarantees.
a big sigh of relief. But and there was one book that I read by a survivor, and she said, this survivor thing is really funny business, because the only way you'll know if you survive breast cancer is if you die from something else.
That's right.
Right. And I was like, and the word survivor sort of bothers me a little bit too, because I feel like no one really survives breast cancer, because you don't come at you. It's not the same. You don't come out the way you went in. You just get through it because you have no choice. You
Mhm.
have to get through it. But my friend Tony Turchi, she has a foundation, and she has this new, it's not new because I've heard it all over now, but NED, no evidence of disease.
Mhm.
And I always feel like I'm sort of tempting fate by saying
Right.
I survived,
Mhm.
but it's tricky
It is
business.
tricky business, and I think that the support really stops when the treatment is over, and it's really where you need the most support is in the survivorship. And then there's also the whole um it could be worse. That's my favorite comment. Could have been worse. Yeah, it could have been worse. And don't make me feel bad that it wasn't worse. And now I need survivor's guilt on top of all of it,
Right.
way worse than I do. So there are times I feel very guilty for having the bad feelings that I have, or I'm going to say bad because I don't like to label feelings good or bad necessarily, but the sadness or the mourning or whatnot, I do feel guilty sometimes about having that, because there are people out there dying right now, you know. I'm dying too. We're all dying. So I know it's different. I know it's different, but just because somebody has it worse, I read this quote. It said something like, "You can drown in either an inch of water or 10 feet of water. It doesn't matter. You're dead either way." Right.
Right.
So, okay, my inch of water maybe isn't the same as compared to somebody else's 10 feet of water. But at the end of the day, if you're feeling these emotions, they are legit, regardless of where your situation is.
Yeah. And I think another thing, I had to get counseling, and I remember, well, I went through my journey the same time my sister-in-law went through hers. We were diagnosed within a month or two of each other, and she was getting Herceptin and I wasn't.
Mm.
And one really emotional episode for me was I was actually meeting my oncologist for the first time, and Betty was getting her infusion in the other room, and there was a code come over the
Mhm.
um, hospital intercom, and Herceptin can affect your heart.
Mhm.
And Betty was having a panic attack.
Mhm.
And but I knew she was in the other room. So my
Mhm.
oncologist left quickly and she came back in and I burst into tears. And I said,
Yeah.
was that my sister-in-law? And she said, yes, it was. And I was like, is she okay? And anyway, and I started crying and she said, oh no, wait a minute. We don't cry in here. We'll get you a counselor for that. And I was like, that made me cry even more.
Oh my God, that's a horrible thing to say.
Yeah, I changed her.
Yeah.
But I think that and I didn't know at the time that it took me a while to change her. I should have changed her right away. But again, the feeling of you don't question the doctor,
Uh-huh.
the
Yeah,
old thing, the doctor is the doctor. And
that's right.
being your own best advocate, you talk about that in the book. And a lot of women just, they're not happy, which I just applaud you so much that you've gone through 4 surgeries, but you chose that because you want it right.
Mhm.
And so many women live with botched surgeries. I mean, I belong to a lot of groups on Facebook, and you think, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
just see somebody else, get it fixed for yourself, not for anybody
Right.
else, but for yourself.
Yeah, there's a societal issue here where we are there's an underlying feeling of like you are egotistical, narcissistic if you want to look good. Like how you're going to go through another surgery, you're going to do another thing. Is it really, who cares? You're alive. Who cares? Or even like my ex would say to me, and although it was kind, he would say, I don't care. I think you look great. Okay, it's fine. This isn't about you. It's like, it's not about you. I'm glad you think I look great, but it's not about you. When you don't feel like yourself and you have to get up every morning and try to figure out how to put on clothes that hides your deformities or whatnot, when you feel like you can't wear a bathing suit or you can't, wear something sexy, or you can't feel comfortable in bed with somebody, or, you don't feel feminine, it affects your mind. This is breast cancer is a disease of the mind just as much as it is of the breast. And that was part of it for me. And when my heart breaks for women when doctors say to them, this is as good as it gets. And it might be in some cases, but my doctor said that to me, and it was so far from as good as it got that, to patronize me and to undermine my feelings in that way was so hurtful and harmful for my mindset. Um, and you're talking about doing, this was at Sloan. This was a
Mhm.
high up guy at Sloan. This wasn't a, 2-year medical student or whatever. This was like, somebody who had been in the business for a very long time. For him to say to me, I've seen worse. Have
Mhm.
you? Well, maybe that's like a red flag for me.
Right.
Um, the point of my switching doctors was not only to look better, it was to get another opinion outside of that medical system. If the other doctor had said to me, he's right, this is as good as it gets, I would have said, okay, then I know that this is what I'm dealing with and I will accept it. When he took one look at me and he said, this is all wrong,
Yeah.
I was like, thank you. Somebody is hearing me.
Right.
And I had to get over everybody else's opinion of my wanting to look good, including my own, because yes, I have children, and I thought many times, am I keep putting myself under the knife and things happen, and is this really worth it? But you know what, it was really worth it.
Mhm. Well, yeah, if you're not happy with yourself, then that's another obviously big stressor.
Mm-hmm.
And again, thank goodness that you felt that something was wrong. Like that. Again, going back to a lot of women think that the doctor is God, and if the doctor says this, then
Yeah, then
which
that's
is
it. I used to have to say he was so mean. I used to have to say to the nurses, I'm having a tough day today. Can you tell the doctor to try to be nice to me? If I have to tell the nurses, if I have to like prepare the doctor to be nice to me, I'm not asking every doctor to have an amazing bedside manner to be my best friend. You don't have to do that, but you have to treat me with respect.
Mhm.
And um, even the way he would handle me physically, like one of my breasts was lower than the other. So he used to come over and like lift it up and let it fall like that, you know? And I was like, you're hurting me. Like, do you understand that that hurts?
Yeah.
You know, he's, oh, you know, you don't really have any feeling there. No, you don't know. First of all, you never even had breasts. Second of all, you don't know what it's like to go through the surgery. I was very tender. My skin was very tender. And it was like he would just, you know, handle me like that. And I was like, you know, you're not even really handling my body with respect. I don't understand. But yeah, it took me time to get up the courage to go, you know what? Maybe you're not the last person on earth that can help me. You know?
Right. Right. And people should understand too. I know the revisions I had. I mean, they're painful, and if you're willing to um, go, I mean, even I had to have my pockets adjusted. Well, that really, I mean, it hurt.
Yeah.
So they should understand that you not choosing to do this just for this, the heck of it, the fun of it. I mean, this is really
Right.
something that is affecting your life.
Yeah.
So, so wow, what's next for you? You got a lot going on there. You should write a
Yeah.
sequel to the book.
Yes. Well, one of my friends says to me, I think you have like a trilogy in you. Like, what the F just happened? A Survivor's Guide to Life After Divorce. I was like, great. That's just what I need is to be like a trauma trilogy over here.
Yeah.
But you never know.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I said, I'm hoping to be launching this podcast about life after breast cancer. And I have a lot of photography work coming up with breast cancer survivors, lots of new things in the works with that. So it's going to be great.
Oh, wow. Well, is there anything else that I don't want to take up too much of your time? I've really enjoyed our whole talk here today.
Yeah, me too.
Um, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about that we haven't talked about or?
I don't think so. I think you hit on a lot of good stuff.
Hmm. Well, I so appreciate your time.
Could support you in any way.